Okay, here we are. It's time to work with MySQL. I open MySQL, select the command line, enter the password, as you can see here, and I'm using now MySQL. I create the database, then I connect the database to my PopSQL. I enter again the password for the root user. Then I put the database I am going to work with, hotel people analytics, HR hotel people analytics. Connect. Now we are connected to the database. Here you can see. And we change here. Now we are working with our database in PopSQL. To identify the window I am working with, I'm going to rename this to Hotel People Analytics. Now let's start working with PopSQL.
Well, here we are. Now we are working with PopSQL. This is a program to help us. This program will help us to visualize the step of what we are doing with our SQL queries. First, I have already created the hotel table, then employee table, and now I use the describe query to visualize the columns and the type of data they are storing. Now we are going to work with workforce composition. You can see here workforce composition ID, the bar chart, primary key. We set up this value as not null. So when we work with these tables, we are going to be required to insert a value here. Remember, these tables are from our last updated schedule. Now you can see I fixes the arrows, and we can come here to W3 schools, and we have SQL with all the commands we need to create our tables. And also here we have MySQL data type to use in our table. Let's go here. Now we need to add department. Again, not null. Now it's time to add the IDs from the other tables. And now we are going to create a reference to our IDs. So let's copy here. One, two, three. And we are going to say that employee ID reference to employees, employee ID, hotel ID to hotel ID, and here hotel composition. Now we have workforce composition created. This everything is okay. Here we are going to have the success confirmation. There we made a mistake. Here. Now we run and everything is okay. Let's create our last table, employee wages. If you are wondering why I am using capital letters here to create table, that is because of convention. The commands, it's better to put them with capital letters because when we read our queries or our code, we can identify that these represent SQL commands and they are not part of the tables. I have finished this off camera and you can see we create all the values, float. We are going to say that 3 numbers and 1 decimal, 5 numbers and 2 decimals, 8 numbers and 2 decimals. Again, employee ID and the reference. If everything is okay, we are going to have the success value here. It's important to put the comma at the end of each line. Let's run here. Everything is okay. So now if we come here and copy this and we paste here, let's say hotels, and we run this, hotel ID, name, location, date, and now you run here, varchar, integer, varchar. Is that correct? Yes. Now workforce composition, everything is okay. And the last one, employee wages. There. Now we have all our tables as the same as our schedule. And now what we are going to do is connect these tables to our Python code, download our Excel file, and load that file to MySQL database. Well, here we are now. This is my Visual Studio Code, and you can see this is the project we are working with. Remember, People Analytics Hotel. And to work with MySQL and Python, I needed to import MySQL connector, and from SQL Alchemy, I needed to import Create Engine. This is two libraries that are going to help us work with MySQL and to transfer our data to our MySQL database. I have already loaded the Excel files to Python, and remember I have adjusted the data types of the tables because some of them were changed when I load the data here in Python. I check all the data is correct, and also I have to change some names of the columns, and later I'm going to explain you why. Well, I have already running MySQL in my computer, so I don't need to connect to the database. But when we are working here with Python, we need to establish that type of connection. And I create the connection by using the try except method. So you can see db is equal to MySQL connector. Here I'm using the first library I'm talking about. The command connect, the host is gonna be localhost because I have here my computer, the user is root. And the password, you can see that there is a variable here. That is because I'm using another password that is stored here in this file. So then I import this file and I pass the password over here. So if the connection is correct, I want to print the message connection established. And if there is an error, I want to see what type of error I am receiving. And then I need to create a cursor. This is to help us when if we want to use SQL or MySQL queries here with Python. With this cursor, we can work with. Later, I created the engine connection. You can see again, host name is going to be localhost. The database is VHI Hotel People Analytics. Again, the username is root and the password. I run the following commands. Now I have these commands like comments because I have already loaded the data and I can't load the data again. As you can see, I use the same command df row hotel to SQL and I call them hotels because that's the name I have put to the table here. Employee, you can see hotels. I run this command to connect to the database. This table exists. I append all the data from this variable, and because I don't want to use an index, the data already have index, I put this value as false. Later, I was telling you that I needed to change some names of the columns. That is because when you connect or move the data to a table, you have two options. You replace of the data or you can append the data. In my case, I wanted to append the data. So what happened? Because the column names differ between them, the data couldn't be uploaded to MySQL. So I changed the name of the columns to be the same as the ones I used to create these tables. You can see employees, employee ID, name, surname, birthday, and also the same type of data is required to be established. Later, when we create float data types in SQL, it's not necessary to establish these two values. We can only put float and the program is going to recognize the data with no problem. And now I want to show you that if I use query here, you're going to see that the data is already loaded. And now we can work with our data using SQL from MySQL, or we can work with our data here with Python, or we can work with our data with Excel. Well, that's most of the work we are doing. And now we need to create some visualizations. I am going to use again Python and Power BI to create those visualizations. And with that, let's find some KPIs that we can work with. And let's see what the data is showing to us and what insight we can achieve working with our data. The last video is going to be all the visualizations and a more clean Jupyter Notebook file. And I will try to upload all the data to my portfolio. See you in the next series. Bye.